welcome to part 2 of the Navigating Your Leadership Journey with Mike Nassar. I am excited that you're joining us today. You're going to find what Mike is sharing might challenge some of you, might challenge some of those beliefs you have about leadership, but more importantly, might also challenge the vision that you have for your future growth as a leader as well. So step into the sandbox. Let's get ready to go for part 2 of Navigating Your Leadership Journey with Mike Nassar. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you in the sandbox. So I want to shift over into talking about how you navigate the transition of like that season of change. So you had a big transition and you've had them before. It's not the first one. But what advice would you offer to leaders who might be facing some transition, whether it's their team members that are transitioning off, right? Or the org structure is changing, roles are changing, or the leader themselves is transitioning off. You've seen a lot of different transitions over your career. So how do you help people? What would you offer for navigating that?
I would say change is inevitable and change is good. And over time, I would think anybody that you know that has had change in their life, if they look back, in many cases, they're going to look back and say it was a good thing that change occurred. And sometimes, obviously, it's difficult typically while it's happening or in the midst of it. Change is difficult. But I think if you just focus on where you're going, I think it's okay. It'll be okay. Change is going to happen. I mean, it's not typical, I would say, for people to say that they were at two companies over 30 years, or in this day and age, even to say that they were at 10 companies over 30 years. Change is going to happen, and um, it should be viewed as a favorable thing. Uh, you're gonna have change in life, and one of the things that I talked to a group recently, and one of the things that they mentioned about my employment history was that I didn't have enough breadth of experience on my resume because I was only involved with two companies over a long period of time. And I almost apologized for that. I didn't, but
Good.
it was okay. But I was talking to a very very good person, and I said, you know what, I did have. You're right. I only have two companies that I can really say I spent 28 years with, and one of the things I can tell you is that I had a ton of experience at both these companies where I had many different things I was involved with, and obviously she understood where I was coming from. But it was interesting to hear that. But companies are actually looking for people that have had different types of experiences. So it's okay if you're in a position where you've had four or five or more jobs over the last 10 or 15 years. It's okay for that to happen. That actually may be looked upon favorably as you navigate into your next role. I think
Yeah.
it's good for you to have varied amount of experience. For me, I get to take this experience that I've had doing a lot of fun things and having um, so many nuanced experiences throughout North America, and even getting a chance um, to learn about doing business in Japan, for example, and doing business in the UK, and even learning from my peers that were doing business throughout other areas of the world, doing business on the healthcare side and on the surgical side, or in surgical operations. I learned about all of that, and I couldn't be happier that I was able to experience that and now apply it to other companies that may be able to benefit from that experience that I had.
Yeah, that's funny to me that someone actually questioned because it wasn't that too long ago, from my perspective, where you looked at a resume and you looked at people with a lot of different jobs in different companies and you question it. Right?
Right.
That was just a few years ago. And now someone's
Absolutely.
saying, well, you haven't had enough, except that to not, when you look at the breadth of what you did in each company and the different positions that you held and how you know, um, that because all each position you held, I have no doubt required a different level of leadership skill and acumen for each position. Different ways of communicating up and down, different ways of delivering difficult conversations, so all of those
Absolutely.
things, it was different skills that you needed for each of those positions. That's funny to me.
You're absolutely
Uh,
right.
yeah. So, but good for you for not apologizing, by the way.
I almost did,
No, stop. It's not you. I think it's short sighted on the other individual through no disrespect. It's just not
of
seeing
course.
the breadth, right, of what was. So that's curious. Makes me interesting. So when your company is going through, let's say you're a middle manager and you're navigating a transition with leadership, what do you recommend? Because you've gone through that too, and you've been on both sides of that. So you're a middle manager and leadership is transitioning. What do you recommend? Like, what are some keys that they can use from your arsenal to navigate that well? Where's their focus to be?
I would say stick to your values. Do what you think is right. And I know that's hard to take. People will say, well, yeah, easy for you to say, Mike, but stick to your values. Do what's right. Do what you know is the correct thing. Um, if you have an audience, if you can speak to your new manager or whoever it is that you're reporting to, find out what they're looking for. Make sure your values are aligned. If they're not, you may have some tough choices to make. Um,
Yeah.
and in this day and age, that may not be an easy thing to do to make a choice.
Right.
But it'll be up to you to determine whether or not you're in a position to make that choice.
Hmm.
I think it's uh, I think it's important to work for the right people and the right companies. And if you're not working for the right people and the right companies, again, uh, you're not a tree. You can move. Um, Make the right choice. And um, there are companies out there um, um, that are better to work for than others. And I'm not saying a mass exodus is needed. I'm not saying that I'm a believer in people silent quitting or any of that stuff. I have my thoughts on that, maybe for another show. But um, as an individual, you should do what's good for you and what's right for you and your family. But I don't think you should ever sacrifice your values.
Yeah, that's so important. It's sad when, there's so many people that don't necessarily even know their values. So, number one, tip is definitely understand what your core values are and then how those align. I made a career transition many, many years ago because I've shared the story. I had a perpetual bruise on my forehead because I kept running into the same wall because my values and the values in the organization that I was in didn't match. It didn't, and it was, no one was wrong for that. They weren't wrong. I wasn't wrong. It just wasn't a match. So I could keep, you know, beating my head against that post that I kept running into because it was a value misalignment. And so, or I can make a bold decision for myself and transition. Even though I loved the work and it was amazing and I was really great at it, it just wasn't, you know, it was a value. So important to know the value, your values, as well as the values of the organization or the leaders around you that are influencing you in the workplace as well, because it does make a difference for sure. So,
Absolutely.
when it comes to navigating, something you were saying that popped into my head of when a manager, they find maybe in times of transition or even just maybe just frustration of they feel like they're not being heard. What are some tools that you would suggest so they can, okay, my values aren't in alignment maybe, or we're not communicating. I don't feel like that I'm hearing everything that's going on, so I as a manager can't communicate it to my people, right? What do you suggest for that manager? What's some keys you would give them to be able to do in that, because that's one of those sticky middle areas that I know people run into.
I think asking for clarification is vital, right? So, um, I think I learned a long time ago that representation of staff is a key pillar of management, right? So, representing your staff to the people that you report to, and representing the company to your staff is a key pillar of management. So, um, uh, knowing how to represent the company to your people and knowing how to represent your people to the company, I think is key. So, um, knowing what your supervisor or what your company, how your company wants the company represented to your people, I think is vital. And you've got to know that from whoever you report to. How do you want me to represent these decisions to the people that report to me?
Yeah.
Um, and if there's a communication media, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a town hall, whether it's something coming from the top down, um, then you've got to be able to share that openly with your people. If that's not there, then there's got to be some sort of message that you can share as a leader with your people. If your people have a message that needs to be shared to your supervisor, then there's got to be a way for that message to be shared. With all the ways that we have to communicate in this day and age, communication shouldn't there shouldn't be a block in communication. There shouldn't be any reason for communication not to happen. Um, it makes you wonder when it's not happening, right?
Yeah.
In a small group or in a larger group. Maybe certain communication needs to happen behind closed doors. I get it. So let's figure out how to have that communication.
Mhm.
And if you can't come out and meet me, let's have a communication via video. Um, but to not get any communication, it's got to make you wonder, and
Yeah.
that's where the values come into play.
Yeah. Well, and wonder on both sides of that. It could be that the person isn't asking the right questions to really see that they understand, oh, I've got everything I need and this is how, and you said it really well, to just, to go back and say, so how do you want me to represent the company, and while we're giving this information, how do you want me to represent this information? What do you want me to say? So many times folks aren't asking even those types of questions to ensure clarity before they proceed, and they'll just sit frustrated feeling like they don't have what they need, instead of being bold and asking a question to get that clarity. And until they get that clarity, keep asking. But the same is true then for leaders, to say, hold on, we've had this conversation 3 times, I'm not under, what are you not clear about still, right? Like that
Absolutely.
dialogue, it goes both ways. And I think oftentimes we miss because we don't ask, and or we miss because we believe we've asked but we didn't actually receive what the information was. And so for those middle managers, it's important to um, keep asking until you get it, and ask for help if you don't. It's like, okay, then you come and communicate to my people because they're still asking me. I don't this transition's happening and I don't know what you said though too about communication. It is always in the top 3 issues when you survey companies, if not the number one. It's always within the top 3 of the issues that plague organizations today, is communication. And it goes to that many factors, but it's a key point. If people aren't asking, then they're not going to get it, because as you know from your role and the roles you've held, busy CEOs, busy leaders, they're off onto many things. So if I've communicated it, unless you're asking me, I'm assuming you've got it right. You understand what the mission is, or the goal is, or the expectation is. And so ask more questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will tell you, I, I talk to a lot of people, and
Yeah.
um, I'm always listening. I'm always trying to learn. As I mentioned, I have three adult children. I have a lot of friends. This is an issue across all a lot of companies of all sizes, including some very well-known companies with some very well-known leaders,
Right.
where leaders at all levels have a problem communicating. Employees are not communicated to. They don't have a clue in some cases of what's going on.
It's true.
It's not just an issue with some companies. It's an issue across the board. I think if we can get better at communicating, again, in an age where you would think communication would have been a lot
So
easier and
easy.
a lot better,
Yeah.
it's a lot tougher.
Mhm.
And hopefully that'll change for the better moving forward.
Yep. Yeah. It will when we shift the way that we view communication. And, it's not just that we don't have the luxury of saying it once and be done. And we also don't have the luxury of us walking into any environment and assuming because it was said once that we all have the same understanding. And
Right.
so it's
Right.
that getting to understanding that's also key as well. But you're right, we have all the tools to have it. So to not be an issue.
Agreed.
All right. So I'm curious from your perspective, um, how do you define excellence in leadership?
Hmm. Um, Yet to be defined. Um, Something to
Fair.
always be striving for. Um, I would think uh, leadership excellence is, a leader that's is respected, um, a leader that's looked up to, um, someone that people would love to be associated with, not just someone that you'd want to work for, but someone that you'd want to partner with, someone that you'd want to emulate, um, and um, someone that inspires you. But I can't think of one right now.
All right. Well, what about this? Thank you for that. What do you think I mean, those were qualities and traits for sure. But when it comes to being, and as someone who has served in various positions and at the top, at the tippy tip top, what about the approaches? What are the approaches that you have found in leading teams and driving organizational success that really have been most successful for you?
Yeah.
What
Um,
approaches?
I would say being empathetic, being a
Mm-hmm.
listener, being a learner at all times, being communicative, um, being accessible, at least to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
um, always open to new ideas, um, and growth minded. I think it's open. It's important to be. It's important to have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and as a good friend of mine and a great leader of mine once said, "History's for the historians." How we did things doesn't matter. It's more important to be focused on the future.
On the future. That's it. Yeah, I couldn't agree more for sure. So I'm going to give you one more question.
Sure.
I love this conversation. I'm grateful. And I want to know from your perspective, looking ahead, what do you see the most significant opportunities and challenges facing businesses today, leadership teams, organizations in your consulting realm, right? What do you see the most significant opportunities and challenges they face? What are those?
Um, First and foremost, I think it's getting the buy-in of staff. Getting staff to buy into something, whether it's the mission of the company or um, the product of the company or something that people can buy into in this day and age, and it's becoming tougher and tougher. It used to be where you can get staff to buy into the charisma of the leader or to buy into the actual product or, to your point, the widget that's being made. Now it's very difficult to find what it is that people are buying into.
Mm-hmm.
But finding a way to get the buy-in of the staff, of the people to the company, um, that's going to be the toughest thing to get. There's no such thing as loyalty of staff anymore. That's out the window. But just getting buy-in, even if it's for a short period of time, I think is difficult. Um, and that to me is going to be the toughest thing. So you've got to have the right leaders, the right management in place to connect with those folks that are on staff for that period of time that you have them. And the connection in line and the connection along with the communication, I think, is key for, again, for whatever that period of time that you have that staff with you or that team with you, I think is key.
Yeah, it's good. That's really good. I think that what I appreciate about that too, and that getting that buy-in and having people have a collective ownership with you, that it's not just one person, it's all of us. And how do we collectively together move this forward? Um, and I see that where in organizations where we tend to, as much as we want to go in and blow up silos. And I think, it's like we keep having these, I watch these ebbs and flows where people are very collaborative. Company, our workforce is asking for collaboration. The younger generations want collaboration. They're not interested in silos, but we tend to, through our old structures, put people in silos, put teams in silos, right? Like we don't cross departmentally talk or whatever. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges too that leaders face. And we're really going to manage strategically. How do we take those down and have people cross collaborate, implementing mentoring programs? I've talked about that before. That that's important because you've got a younger generation of people that are coming up that are hungry for that. And that will also, people don't, the great quote, people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses. And the way we navigate that, to your point too, is building that buy-in, which comes from that shared values and that alignment to the vision or the goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Now this is really going to be my last question. No, I'll probably have two more. What advice, Sir Mike, what advice would you offer to aspiring leaders, even entrepreneurs? Because I know you are entrepreneurial as well and really have worked with businesses of all types, based on your own journey and experience in building and leading successful companies and teams. What final piece of advice today would you share?
Um, I would say you've got to put in the work and
Yeah.
always be, and then fill in the blank. You know, Glenn Ross, always be closing. I've always had always be something, always be selling, always be recruiting, always be trying, always be doing something. People that come in and say, "Oh, we've got enough sales today. I'm not going to do anything." That's not going to work. So you've always got to be doing something. I think there's got to be some level of hustle in your game,
Yeah. It's good.
because when you stop working, uh, something, it just doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work.
There's 13 days left in the month and I've almost hit my sales quota, so I don't have to show up for the
Right.
next
And
11 and a half, right?
when you think you've heard it all, guess what? There's more to hear. I heard somebody say a few months back that, they already made their quota this month, so whoever's coming in today, they're not going to give it 100%. And I
Oh,
almost lost my mind. And it's like,
wow.
not only, okay, so let's say you're satisfied with your paycheck, but what about those people that actually came in for us to solve a problem for them? Are
Yeah.
we just going to ignore them today? And
So
you
true.
just can't stop. You just can't
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
That to me is key. And one bit of crazy advice I'll give to people that are doing a good job out there is be careful what you wish for. I've seen some folks that were doing really well in positions that I thought were perfect for them, and they were wishing for those promotions, those bigger titles, and those small pay increases, and they fell flat on their faces in those higher roles when they got that promotion over time. And sometimes you're better off in that role that you're in, where you're very successful, and maybe waiting, or maybe getting the training or getting the additional experience before that promotion is probably better for you than jumping to that higher level position before you're ready for it. So,
Yeah. So good.
yeah.
That is a great way to bring our conversation today, but I heard you say earlier there will be a next time because we have more to talk about. But I think that's a great way to bring it down to a close. That we are, sometimes people can really wish for the title, the corner office, the whatever, and it's not really the fit for them, and it's okay. And so,
Right.
so that's important to know too. And I really appreciate that. Well, Mike Nassar, I am grateful that you came into the Sandbox today. Thank you for joining me. And I appreciate the wisdom that you shared and the tips that you shared from your career in the 2 companies. I kid. You have a huge breadth of
Thanks.
experience, and we didn't even tap into the other businesses that you've owned over the years as well, as you've been growing through other organizations. So you have a breadth of experience, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us for this final part 2 of our conversation with Mike Nassar in the Sandbox today. I appreciate that you've taken the time to spend with us as you are learning and navigating your leadership journey. My hope is that you're leaving with new tips, tools, and strategies for your personal leadership and for your team leadership, and really for that next bold conversation, or as we learned today, that bold request that you're going to make. And hey, it would mean so much to me if you took a moment to share this episode and the content that you shared, the value of the content that you gained from spending time in the Sandbox today. Third-party affirmations go a long way in today's world economy, and I'd be honored if you shared the value that you gained from spending time here. Now, make sure that you click like, that you click share, and that you comment. Give us a 5-star or give us a thumbs up. Tell us how we did, because we want to know that we're having an impact on you, wherever and whatever stage you're at in your leadership journey. Now, remember, friend, leadership isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you grow into. So thank you for taking the time to grow into your next level of leadership in the Sandbox today. Make it a great day.